Liz Truss has resigned as Britain's Prime Minister after just 44 days in office, triggering the second Tory leadership election in 4 months. So just how has this played out? In early September, Truss won the leadership contest to replace Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, at the time promising to act quickly to tackle the UK's cost of living crisis. It was a difficult start to her leadership as the world tuned into the news of the Queen's death on September the 8th. That was just 2 days after she got the job. Jumping ahead, her new Finance Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng, unveiled a mini-budget in Parliament, intending to cut household taxes and energy bills while driving economic growth. But the plans backfired, appearing to have the opposite effect. UK government bond yields soared and the pound hit a record low, forcing the Bank of England to intervene. Truss, she initially defended her economic plan, shrugging off the negative reaction from financial markets, saying the problems were global and spurred by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But then, in a humiliating U-turn, the government reversed plans to cut the country's highest rate of income tax. By October the 14th, Kwarteng was out. He was sacked after just 38 days and replaced by Jeremy Hunt. Truss has since apologised for the turmoil, telling the BBC she would accept responsibility and say sorry for the mistakes that have been made. Now for more, we are joined by UK political commentator Quintin Peel, an Associate Fellow at Europe programme Chatham House. Good morning, Quintin. Thanks for being with us. You must feel exhausted.
It's been just an extraordinary few days, culminating in yesterday, a scene of total chaos in the House of Commons. And I think it just showed that Liz Truss was completely out of control in her own party. She simply didn't have the backing and she had to go.
Just looking back on the past 24 hours, I think fisticuffs in the halls of Parliament. I know there was a backbencher who came out and declared that this was a pitiful reflection on the Conservative Party. He was livid. She was a Prime Minister that was in office but wasn't in power, wasn't she?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's not just the problem of Liz Truss, it's the problem of the Conservative Party, which is really in a shambles and has been probably ever since the Brexit referendum, which totally split the party and it split the country as well. So really, we've been struggling to get back to normal on politics, and we simply haven't. Boris Johnson was a bit of a disaster as Prime Minister, and Liz Truss seems to have been even worse.
So everyone predicted that this would happen. I mean, as you know, there has been Liz versus a lettuce. Would a lettuce last longer than Liz? But what happens? You know, what does happen now? We have another leadership race for somebody that was never kind of voted for by the general public anyway.
The truth is, I think we've got a real constitutional crisis because there's nothing in the rule book to sort out the problem of having a party in power with a big majority in Parliament, 80-seat majority in Parliament, but actually proving itself incapable of deciding on its leader and uniting its own ranks. Really what should happen is what the opposition is demanding. There should be a general election. But the Conservatives are not going to vote for a general election because it looks like they would lose it massively. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And I'm afraid that the Conservative members of Parliament at the moment are looking rather like those turkeys.
Are we watching a disintegration of Parliament?
Well, we're certainly
a disintegration,
We're certainly seeing, I think, a loss of trust in the political process. And in a way, it goes back to that Brexit referendum, which took the decision out of Parliament and gave it to the people, if you like. And as a result, Parliament has seemed really quite disastrously weakened. Then you get the Conservative Party opting for Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, a man who never really seemed to take his job very seriously and was accused of misleading Parliament and of not obeying the rules during the COVID referendum. So that was the first disastrous step. And then, having got rid of him, they rushed into having Liz Truss, who won power by appealing to all the most conservative instincts of her party. And once again, she split the party. So the question is, can they find any leader to reunite the party, or will they somehow be forced into a general election?
Well, can they, Quentin? Who have they got? The Times is reporting that Boris is going to make a comeback.
That really, I think that would be a step too far. Excuse me, I'll have to... I'm sorry, I got an interruption there.
That's all right.
I think Boris coming back is actually a bit ridiculous. The immediate reaction from the backbenches of the Conservative Party was one man who said, I think I'd join the Labour Party if he came back. But the trouble is, he's an election winner. And so they are really caught because the alternatives all look rather dull and not likely to win them any election. I mean, they're trailing 30 or more than 30 percentage points in the polls, which would be a complete disaster for the party.
We talk a lot, I guess, in media and you as a political commentator about things being extraordinary and madness and crazy. And sometimes, I guess, they're not. But this has been an extraordinary time in British politics, hasn't it?
It has, yes. And we all say, we've never known anything like this before. Shortest serving Prime Minister, shortest serving Chancellor of the Exchequer, and Parliament at loggerheads, if you like, with itself and with the country. But it goes back, remember, and I don't want to overemphasise the point, but that Brexit referendum took power away from Parliament. And it took power away from Parliament, and ever since we've had a sort of standoff between the parliamentary system and, if you like, referendum democracy.
And when we look at it as well, the actions of the past 44 days have really impacted the general population in Britain, haven't they? It's not something that is just happening removed from the public. It's affecting them day to day.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we are facing a very serious economic recession. We're facing soaring inflation, worst inflation for 40 years. It's over 10%. And food prices, above all, are what's going up fastest. Energy prices too. And of course, we've got the war in Ukraine, which is forcing energy prices up. And so I think that ordinary people are feeling really very threatened. And they're looking at the government and saying, these people are not capable of getting the situation under control.
And you mentioned it before, but, I mean, surely there will be no general election? You're a very busy man, Quentin.
Sorry?
You're a very busy man. You're fielding all your emails.
I fear somebody else wants to talk about what's happened to Liz Truss.
Oh, I'm sure. I was just mentioning on the general election. It just can't happen unless the Conservatives let go?
Yeah, the Conservatives have got to lose a major vote in Parliament before there could be a general election. And they will do anything to avoid it. They don't want to lose their jobs. But the Labour Party is absolutely adamant. And the opinion polls suggest that an overwhelming majority of the population think there ought to be a general election.
What would be your predictions for the next week or so? Who will end up on top?
I think the Tories will hang on in there and look more and more damaged. And in the end, one way or another, I think we will have an early general election.
And just quickly, just before we go, I just noticed Liz Truss in her resignation speech outside Downing Street. She almost seemed quite jolly. What did you think of that?
I don't know. I think that she must feel very humiliated, by this whole process. The amazing thing to me is that she wanted the job at all at a time like this. I mean, it really is not a nice moment to be running the United Kingdom. It's just a mess.
It is, and definitely more to come on it. Quinton Peel from Chatham House, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I'm sure you're going to have a busy evening.
I'll have to answer that call. Thanks very much.
Thank you.